Good evening, everyone. I'm Vishal Salsekar, and today we are going to cover the News Today articles for 31st of October. Right. So, in today's News Today discussion, we are going to cover 5 important articles in detail, which includes the article like the United States and China has recently met on the sidelines of Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation (APEC). Right. So, there are certain important outcome from these two countries' perspective as well as from the global perspective that we are going to discuss. Next is regarding the ocean-based CCUS process, which is carbon capture and utilization, right? So there are multiple processes with respect to that, how the global carbon or basically the carbon that is available in the atmosphere can be sequestered and can be transported beneath the ocean surface or beneath the land surface. There are certain processes attached to it. So we are going to discuss about those particular ocean-based CCUS processes, right? Next is regarding the cryptocurrency, a property which is being stated by the Madras High Court. So there has been certain issues with respect to the cryptocurrency architecture, because the point is that that is not a recognized currency first. Second thing is that right now, even before this particular judgment, it was not clear that it is lying under the status of a property or not. So now the Madras High Court had clarified about a lot of speculation that could have been creating a confusing status. So now it has been comparatively clear. So we will discuss about the cryptocurrency and the aspects associated with this particular judgment. Next is regarding the artificial intelligence and the CT, which is the basically your quantum related aspects, right? So we will discuss about that, and that is in the school education. So with respect to artificial intelligence or the quantum technologies, how that can be incorporated as far as the school education and the teaching pedagogy that is concerned. So we will see what will be the process and what will be the benefits or the outcome out of this. The last in this we will discuss regarding the land subsidence in the Indian mega cities. So it has been observed that the land over which you are living is subsiding, and obviously there will be certain issues that are leading to this particular situation, and obviously when this particular situation will be manifesting to its fullest, it will be also causing a lot of consequences. So we will discuss about these in detail. Then we will talk about the personality in news, who is Pasumpan Muthuramalinga Thevar, right? So prominent personality associated with the freedom movement, specifically related to the Tamil Nadu region. We are going to discuss about him, and then there are certain other news in shorts also. So let's start the discussion with the very first article regarding the US and China meeting. So US and China president on the sidelines of the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation met, and the summit held in Busan, right? Obviously, when we are talking about the global politics or the geopolitics, there will be the important aspects that can be covered from the international relations perspective. So GS paper to international relation and the regionalism, because there are certain organizations that will be in the news. Previously, we had discussed about ASEAN. Right now, we are talking about even APEC, which is a regional organization including the countries of the Asia and the Pacific. So the Pacific Ring of Fire that you are seeing generally for the geography, comparatively, those countries are the member of the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation. So this grouping was formed roughly in late 1980s. To be precise, 1989 में ये cooperation it was formed in order to ensure the cooperation between the Asian region and the Pacific. So जो converging region है between Asia and Pacific, those countries were the part of it. So India is not a member country of this Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, right? So now from the perspective of India, what is the construct? The construct is Indo-Pacific. So the Indo-Pacific is not only limited to Asia, it is also incorporating the Africa in it. So from the eastern coast of Africa to the western coast of Pacific, now the entire construct is shifted to Indo-Pacific. But still, when the prime president of these two countries met on the sidelines of APEC, it is important because there were certain important outcomes. So what were the key outcomes of the Busan meet? So there were certain key outcomes. The first outcome was regarding the US agreed to reduce the tariff, punishing China for the flow of fentanyl into the US by 10%. Now see, we have already talked about the fentanyl and the associated issue. So it is a opioid or a synthetic drug which is having the similar kind of properties but more intense or more potent drug like the other opioids. ठीक है. So basically in order to utilize, so in the form of certain opioids, this fentanyl is also being utilized, but in the United States many such instances are being observed that there is even death that is being caused because of this fentanyl, and hence there have been, when the China is one of the major supplier of the fentanyl even illegally, so in that particular case there were tariffs that were imposed. So roughly 20% tariffs were imposed on China. Now in this particular meeting, obviously US had to give certain concessions to China because US wanted support on the context of the rare earth element, right? And that's why they have decided to reduce the tariff from 20% to now 10%. So what is the updated tariff on the fentanyl? It is 10%. What it is a opioid drug like morphine and the heroin, but it is way more potent as compared to this morphine and the heroin, even 50 to 100 times more potent as compared to these drugs. So you can see what is the intensity of this particular drug. The next they have agreed for is to extend the 1 more year pause on the export control of the rare earth element. So a few days back, I have entirely discussed this particular topic, and you can watch this particular video on the YouTube channel where I have discussed regarding the rare earth element related monopoly of China. There I have entirely deconstructed. So you can just visit the channel and you can watch this video entirely. You will get a clear idea about how China has built up the monopoly over a period of time. But when China has already built up the monopoly, when China is processing 90% of the rare earth element, in that cases, when China is utilizing it as a tool, कि भाई if you are imposing something on us, we will not supply the rare earth element to you. So in that particular cases, China agreed now with the cooperation of United States कि भाई we will not impose the export control for 1 year. मतलब whatever export control they were putting, that will be halted for 1 year. What benefit it is going to do? So US में, when the companies which were manufacturing, let's say, the different type of radars, different platform, fighter aircraft, missiles, and many other technological equipment, and almost all of these are utilizing the rare earth element. So if there is supply of the rare earth element, obviously those companies are going to produce those things in general, and that will be helped by China, that China is not going to control the export of the rare earth element. Now what are these rare earth elements? So there are 15 from the lanthanide series, and apart from that there are 2 other elements. So it is a group of basically 17 elements. So the rarity does not come from their presence in the earth crust, but the rarity is the way they are being extracted and they are being found. So वो जो concentration which is needed in order to extract those particular material, that particular concentration is generally not available on the earth, and that is found in the scattered manner, and that's why, and that's where the rarity comes in the name of the rare earth element. Okay. Next, the US president dubbed the meeting as the G2. Now what does G2 represent? So you might have seen G20, you might have seen G7, G8, like these countries, right? What is G2? Means basically these are the 2 prominent power. On one side it is US, on the other side it is China. Now they are dubbed as the major power which are responsible for the now global good. That means whether it is the global economy, whether it is global polity. Like previously during the time period of Cold War, so Cold War mein who were the 2 pole? During the Cold War it was the US versus USSR. But rather than cooperation, they were against each other, they were 2 pole. But here right now they are talking about that these 2 countries can cooperate in order to ensure the betterment of the world. Now this particular term was first popularized by the American economist C.F. Bernstein in 2005, and that particular time pe China was not the way China it is presently, but there was potential that was being recognized by the economist and many other people, and now China became the 2nd largest economy and soon to surpass even the United States. So the chances are very high that these 2 countries, roughly for let's say a decade more, will be the more powerful countries, and they are bound to conflict and that's why they have to cooperate also at some times. So joint responsibility on the economic governance, trade imbalances, and the global problem solving. So previously, what task used to be done by US and USSR means keeping in check their own bloc. Now the polarity cannot be exactly like the bipolarity of the Cold War time period, but to some extent we can see that if the US is posing certain specific policies, let's say the tariff policy, China is also retaliating. China has put the export control policy, and in that manner, now the bipolarity can be manifested. So this is the way it is being highlighted by President Trump, recognizing this as G2. That also means that now US formally recognizes China as the global power, because this represents कि भाई देखो एक power तो हमें, another power is China. That means US is now keeping China as its equivalent. Now, what will be the impact of the outcomes that we have seen? So what will be the impact in general of G2 and the outcome का impact अगर हम देखें तो obviously regarding this fentanyl, obviously the supply of fentanyl is going to get increased from China because the tariff has reduced. Next is the rare earth element. Now when we talk about that the export control is halted for 1 more year, there will be comparatively better availability of the rare earth element in the process from the China. Why? Because the export control is halted for 1 more year. Apart from that, regarding G2, there are certain implications. For example, regional institutions ka relevance. So see, there are many such regional institutions in the Indo-Pacific are formed on the pretext of that China is putting up the aggressive policies. And when US is going to recognize China that yes, whatever China is doing is correct, and in that way, US is also getting benefited. So in that particular sense, what will be the utilization of Quad? Which was formed basically to ensure free, open, and secure Indo-Pacific region. Also, AUKUS. So Quad was where India is also partner. AUKUS में Australia, UK, and US. So this is basically in order to boost the capabilities of Australia, and this is a trilateral cooperation, and to some extent it is against China military grouping. Now, on the one side, US is cooperating with China. On the other side, US is building the capability of Australia in order to counter China. So this is a dichotomous policy of US. Similarly, shift towards the bipolarity. Obviously, see, China also wants to get benefit of United States and also keep on growing. So China do not exactly want the confrontation, but at the same time want to ensure its supremacy in the region. And that's why there are very high chances that this kind of situation might lead to the bipolarity. So it can undermine the multipolarity and can go for the bipolarity. Next is dependence on China, because we already know that the rare earth element ke context mein, it is the monopoly of China. 70% of the rare earth mineral extraction and 90% of processing is being done by China. So in that case, the global and the American reliance on China for the critical mineral supply chain right now for at least 1 year, as per the commitment, it will be supplied. But if the world is not going to diversify, obviously next year similar situation might occur. Lastly, implication for India. Dekho, previously what US had done, that US had shown India the threat of China and then tried to ensure the cooperation of India towards its side. Now, what US can do is to put more chunks on the China and not support the India's policy, which we are to some extent seeing. And also what can be done? So what US might be also doing, US might force China to put more aggressive posture towards India so as to pressurize India. So this might also be the outcome of this particular G2 related thing. So it could reduce the US reliance on India as a geopolitical counter to China. Because if they are cooperating directly, obviously they will not need exact counter in the form of India, right? From the one side, from China, from other side, it can be through the Pakistan. They can poach Pakistan, and they are doing this. Here on the eastern side, it might be Bangladesh. So it is a kind of policy in order to curtail the influence of India. So we have to see like what kind of solution that India might come up with, what kind of the structure, the polarity or alliance system that India can come forward with in order to counter these particular policies, or there will be any kind of reconciliation, right? So this is regarding the outcome of the recent summit. Now see, how UPSC is focusing upon these topics, they are not exactly asking about any outcome of the summit. They are focusing upon that reform process at the United Nations remain unresolved because of the delicate imbalance of the East versus West, entanglement of the US versus Russo-Chinese alliance. Now right now, in the form of G2, they are cooperating, but they can ask that despite G2, there are fundamental differences between the China and US, and that's what the question that they may be asking, right? So you should be prepared with your set of arguments regarding this. Next is talking about the ocean-based carbon capture, utilization and the storage could offer the strategic decarbonization pathway. So from the perspective of UPSC GS paper 3, obviously the environment, ecology related things, also the climate change, science and technology, because there are certain technological aspects are involved, and also GS paper 1, geography mein, it is an important topic that can be asked. So what is basically carbon capture and storage, utilization and the storage related policy? So through this particular diagram, you can able to understand that what this particular process in very simple terms is. So see, we know that there are certain polluting industry. So the pollution is inevitable thing. We can reduce to some extent, but yes, to some amount, the pollution will be there. What we can do is to capture that particular greenhouse gas emission from the industries, from those point sources, jahan hame pata hai ki these sources are emitting in the form of the greenhouse gases, we can capture that. And then what we can do, once capture, we can compress these. So through compression, the air or the gases will be compressed to the lower volume. And when lower or the lesser volume, it will be easy to transport through the pipeline under the extreme pressure and extremely low temperature. It can be either converted into the liquid form and then it can be transported through the pipelines that are available for that, and through that particular transportation mechanism, either it can be stored beneath the ocean floor or it can be stored even at certain other places. For example, beneath the ground floor, like in the aquifers also, even in certain kind of mines which were previously active, now not being utilized, or the gas reserves previously were active, now not being utilized. So there may be multiple way also in oceans as well as in the land related crust or the earth crust, it can be stored. So basically in this process, what you are doing, you are capturing carbon, then you are basically after capturing, you are either utilizing also. If there are certain industries that needs carbon ka utilization, maybe the hydrogen producing industries or any other industries, so there you are utilizing, and apart from that, what you are doing the sequestration process, and eventually you are reducing the greenhouse gases from the atmosphere and keeping it in the ocean layers or basically in the earth layers for a long period of time. So this is the process of the ocean based CCUS, but over the land or the land based CCUS also you can talk about. Now, what are the key techniques? Because see, obviously there will be certain techniques that has to be utilized in order to perform this carbon capture, utilization, sequestration related things. So what will be these particular processes? First is the ocean alkalinity enhancement, OAE. So see, there are certain alkaline materials which will neutralize the acidities, and basically these are materials, even the pulverized materials, and these materials will help in capturing of the carbons, converting it into the carbonates and the bicarbonates. And when that is being converted into the carbonates and bicarbonate, now they can be stored in the ocean in the form of the alkaline water. Right, so in the form of the bicarbonates and the carbonate ions that can be stored. So this is one such methodology. The next is regarding the ocean fertilization. Sometimes it is also known as the generally iron fertilization. What is iron fertilization here? Suppose karo this is an iron bar, you will be converting this particular iron bar into, let's say, a very very small matlab ne ki chunks wala powder, and that particular powder is spread over the ocean region, and that will lead to the development of the phytoplanktons, and that will accelerate the photosynthesis activities, and this ocean fertilization is going to promote the growth of phytoplankton. Phytoplankton means those particular marine organisms that will be able to do the photosynthesis by themselves, and when they are doing photosynthesis, obviously they will capture the carbon dioxide, and through this you are going to capture the carbon dioxide, store it obviously in the form of the phytoplanktons. Next is the biological carbon capture. So again, in the form of the biological carbon capture, in the form of, like, let's say again, not exactly from the ocean fertilization process, but through the natural processes, maybe the mangroves, maybe the coral reef, or any other processes, if the algal related things can be generated, or any other way may, if there is carbon that can be captured, that is the blue carbon sink that can be created, that will increase the photosynthesis activity, and that will also capture the carbon from the atmosphere and keep it in the ocean surface. So these are certain processes or the techniques that can be utilized in order to capture the carbon, sequester the carbon in the ocean surfaces. Now, what are the benefits? Obviously, when you are capturing the carbon from the atmosphere, it is going to provide the storage of the carbon, and the benefit with these particular storages, it is a long-term storage. So when we talk about this, up to roughly 1 lakh here, when we talk about the processes like ocean alkalinity enhancement, these can keep the carbon dioxide controlled in that particular region for roughly 1 lakh years. So that poses a benefit with respect to this process. Apart from that, when we talk about ocean, the large amount of ocean gives a lot of opportunities with respect to this. So vast storage capacity that is there. So it is storing 50 times more capable than the atmosphere. So jitna carbon atmosphere mein available hai, more than 50 times capability is available with the ocean. So if we utilize it properly, even a fraction of this, that will resolve the problem of the greenhouse gases availability. Next is the safety and scalability. So safety, because now it is no more that much available in the atmosphere, so the issues that are going to be created because of the large amount of the GHGs, that will reduce. And scalability, because the vast ocean availability, that can give a scalable aspect, because if it is successful at certain patch, obviously it can be further scalable, and that will ensure the benefit of this. So at low temperature and high pressure will ensure the compaction and reduction of volume, and in the low temperature it can be converted into the liquid form. So it will be more stable, and that can be stored for a long period of time. So it can be stored in the liquid form. Next is carbon utilization. Sometimes certain industries also need for certain processes carbon. So that carbon, when transported, that can be utilized also. So basically you need not to go for the other resources. You have already available carbon in order to utilize. Next is climate mitigation. So the reduction of carbon dioxide can be achieved. This is one such data. So that can be achieved if we are going to utilize this particular process. And when we talk specifically from the perspective of India, India has the net zero target of carbon jet. That means जितना हम प्रोड्यूस कर रहे हैं उतना ही हम लोग कैप्चर एंड सीक्वेस्टर भी कर रहे हैं. That means net zero. We are not adding any carbon in the atmosphere. So that particular target can be achieved by 2070 if we are going to utilize these processes. And also sustainable blue growth means the ocean related economy, ocean related environmental benefits all can be unplugged if these processes are going to be utilized in a proper manner, right? Now, the previous year question like this, UPSC asked, in the context of mitigation, the impeding global warming due to the anthropogenic emissions of the carbon dioxide, which of the following can be the potential site for the carbon sequestration? These three are mentioned. Try and identify that which particular statement will be correct and which answer will be correct in this particular question's regard. Next is regarding the Madras High Court's judgment regarding the cryptocurrency's recognition as the property. So the Madras High Court becomes the first to recognize cryptocurrency as the property. What type of property? Is it a tangible? No, it is an intangible property. But yes, the features of property are there with the cryptocurrency, and that can pave the way ahead for the legislation and the other status with respect to the cryptocurrency. So the syllabus paper, if you see with respect to which particular paper of UPSC, so GS paper 2, governance, constitution, polity, because when we talk about the interpretation by the constitutional courts, including the High Court and Supreme Court, it is important. Also GS paper 3, because in economy it is directly related. Science and technology, the cryptocurrency and the blockchain technology, it is directly related, right? And also for internal security, because as the cryptocurrency is increasing, even the chances of going for the money laundering with the more advanced methodology, there are chances that are very, very high. Now, what is the context as well as the cases regarding this? So what has happened recently, that there was a case regarding the Ruti Kumari versus Zanmai Labs Private Limited. So in that particular case, what was the story behind the same? Story was that the person has purchased the cryptocurrency and later on the cryptocurrency value also got increased. But क्या हुआ? There was this particular massive cyber attack, and in the massive cyber attack those particular digital assets were frozen. अब जब वो freeze कर दिए गए, that means the person cannot take out his or her amount. So in that case, what Madras High Court had provided a protection to the investor whose digital assets were frozen. The Madras High Court has provided the protection to that particular person, saying that it is the property and the person who has possessed the property has right regarding that particular property. Disposing also is the right under that. Similarly, 2020 May, New Zealand High Court also gave the similar kind of judgment, held the cryptocurrencies as the digital asset and the form of property. So what is the present constitutional status regarding this? So it is a property, intangible property in that particular context. Now, what is the key highlights of this particular ruling? But before that, what are the cryptocurrencies? So basically, to understand this, you can assume that these are electronically generated with the help of blockchain technology, the digital currencies that can be utilized for the transaction. Now, has it got the status of the currency in India? The answer is clearly no. Is it recognized by the RBI as the currency? The answer is again no. Is it backed by RBI? The answer is again no. Previously in 2018, the RBI has released a circular preventing that banks can't trade in the cryptocurrencies and bank can't facilitate the cryptocurrencies. That means the trading abilities of the bank as far as the cryptocurrency related trades are concerned, that is banned. And also apart from that, they cannot facilitate the platform for the cryptocurrency or the crypto assets. And that's what being challenged in the court, and Supreme Court in 2020 struck down that as the violation against the Article 19 right to do the trade and business. So in that particular case, एक ambiguous status create था regarding whether they are enjoying any specific right or not. So in that sense, later on, government in 2022 came up with the idea that under the Income Tax Act, let's make it as a virtual digital asset. That means it is an asset, which is a virtual digital asset, and we will tax on that. So there was 30% tax that was levied upon the cryptocurrencies. That means now government is going to get the cryptocurrency based tax if there is any transaction that is going on, but the banks were not still allowed to do the transaction. So the status clarity nahi tha. And later on, there was also the KYC related things that were highlighted. So this is the series of events that had happened regarding the cryptocurrencies. So what is the nature of cryptocurrency? As of now, it is property after this particular judgment, which is capable of being enjoyed, possessed, and being held in the trust. That means whatever thing you are doing with the property, let's say if I am possessing this particular table, then whatever I want to do with this particular table, I can do, right? So that I can do, the capable of being enjoyed, possessed, or being held in the trust. Next is legal clarification. So as I have told you that virtual digital asset को recognize किया गया cryptocurrency को in 2022 by the government under the Income Tax Act. Now that means there will be taxation that can be done. So it is not illegal. Tax government can take if there is any transaction that is going on with respect to the crypto assets, right? Now, apart from that, even this judgment is giving clarification with respect to the RBI ने जो ban लगाया था उसमें, and that ban only prohibited bank from facilitating the trade. It was not about the status of cryptocurrency. It facilitated or prevented the bank for the facilitation of the cryptocurrency or the crypto asset. So the Supreme Court struck down 2018 का Reserve Bank of India circular in 2020 stating that it is against the right to free trade. Now, what is the significance? Obviously, this particular significance is like whatever gray area that was pertaining regarding the cryptocurrencies, like regulatory clarity nahi thi. So it provides the clarity regarding that. So digital assets as the legally ownable property. Matlab now you can legally own that. It is a virtual digital asset. So virtual digital asset, it was clarified in 2022. But then by this particular clarification, it is now a legally ownable property. So it is a legally owned property also. also. It also protects investor because suppose if you have taken or purchased certain cryptocurrency, now the status is unclear that whether it is virtual digital asset, is it your possession, or maybe arbitrarily that particular company can freeze your asset. So now it is mentioned that investor ki property hai, and if there are any grievances, this investor can go against that. So traditional remedies related to property, whatever remedies are available, that will also be available in the case of the crypto assets. So this is the timeline that we have discussed. 2018 mein RBI banned the banking support to cryptocurrency. So the platform for the facilitation and trading was banned. 2020 mein Supreme Court overturned this ban, terming it as disproportionate, violating the Article 19 AG, freedom to trade and business, as I have already discussed with you. Next is 2022 mein there was a Finance Act, and in that there was changes done with respect to the IT Act, and it was recognized as a virtual digital asset. So 30% tax plus 1% TDS is applied if there is any transaction or anything done with respect to the crypto assets. Lastly, PMLA, which is the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, which talks about the money laundering and prevention related to that particular thing. It talks about the crypto exchanges for mandating the KYC, so that you should be at least aware that who are the people who are investing. So at least that KYC, know your consumer or the customer related things, should be available with those particular platforms. So at least to some extent transparency can be created. Now tell me, what is the status of the cryptocurrency? Is it centralized or is it decentralized? And what is the benefit of that? So for your information, it is a decentralized form. So it is based upon the blockchain technology, and also it is electronically generated. So if you have seen regarding the Bitcoin or the Ethereum, which are basically the prominent type of the cryptocurrency, so they are electronically generated through the algorithms, right? So have a brief idea about that. UPSC asked the question regarding that. So the PYQs have been asked regarding discuss how the emerging technologies and the globalization contribute to money laundering, elaborate the measures to tackle the problem of money laundering, both national and international level. Now they can add up the angle of the cryptocurrencies, how it is being facilitated by that. Next is, what is cryptocurrency? How does it affect the global society? Has it affecting the Indian society also? There can be question even about the recent judgment, or in the context of the recent judgment, what will be the changes, right? The next is regarding the curriculum on the artificial intelligence and the computational thinking, AI and CT, to be introduced from class 3 onwards in the all schools. So artificial intelligence and the computational thinking, which is basically part of now the classes or the curricula of the CBSE and basic schooling, right? So from class 3 onwards, it will be part. So GS paper 2, governance, social justice, educational policy. GS paper 3, science and technology, economy and development. It is important aspect, right? Now, basically, what is curriculum? What is this particular curriculum? What are the developments that are going to take place? Just have a brief idea about this. So curriculum on artificial intelligence and the computational thinking. So in that particular case, see, right now the curriculum is being governed by the National Curriculum Framework for the School Education 2023, right? Now, who is supporting this particular curriculum? Obviously the Ministry of Education. Supported by whom? Supported by the different institutions, like the CBSE is there, NCERT is there, then the Kendriya Vidyalaya are there, then apart from that there are other Navodaya schools are there, then there is state, UTs, different other stakeholders are part of that. So basically they are trying out and identifying the possibilities of integrating the artificial intelligence and the computational technologies as a part of this. Next, the CBSE Expert Committee, chaired by Professor Karthik Raman from IIT Madras. He is also being tasked to develop, or provided the task to develop, the artificial intelligence and the computational technologies or the computational thinking related aspects that can be incorporated in the part of your national curriculum framework, right? Apart from the teacher training, because see, how you are going to teach students regarding the artificial intelligence and the computational thinking if you yourself are not aware about the basics of that, how to identify a problem, how to deconstruct that problem, how to ensure that you are going to address the most important things in a prioritized manner, and also basically produce an algorithm based upon that and solve or provide the solution regarding that. So in that particular case, teacher training is also very important. It is a mammoth task. because the child is one whom you are nourishing now, but the teachers are already established. These are those people who have already done their groundwork, but now regarding the new stream, if you have to make them aware, there is a mammoth task that need to be carried out with respect to this particular curriculum change. So the teacher training and the learning teaching materials on the Nishtha platforms, which will form the backbone for this particular artificial intelligence and the computational thinking based curriculum framework, right? So this is what it is being talked about, and the target that has been set for 2026-27 ki jahan se we will start incorporating this in the educational framework even from class 3 level. Now, what will be the role and what is the importance of this? Now see, it is undeniable that present age is the age of artificial intelligence. Even if you believe it, even if you utilize it or not, there is the progress going on with respect to the artificial intelligence, even the computational thinking or any other aspects regarding this. If there will be utilization of the artificial intelligence at the early age, the child will be able to get a clear idea about how that is performing, what are the ethical aspects of the same, and the child will get the time period in order to assess, in order to identify the problems, in order to get a clarity with respect to that particular system. And hence, it is important in order to include it in the part of curricula, right? So first thing is development of the computational thinking. So it is going to help the computational aspects from the very beginning. What it is going to help? It is going to help with respect to understanding the complex problem and the developing the solution regarding this, how you are going to understand the problem and provide the solution regarding this. So see, whenever you identify any specific problem, first thing what you do, if the problem seems to be complex, what you tend to do, you tend to simplify it. है ना? ऐसा नहीं है ना कि जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल इफ आई टेक द एग्जाम्पल ऑफ यस्टरडेज क्रिकेट मैच बिटवीन इंडिया एंड ऑस्ट्रेलिया, द विमेंस मैच, राइट? सो इन दैट मैच इफ द टारगेट वाज थॉट एज कि 338 वाज द टारगेट एंड वी आर चेसिंग, एंड सपोज करो इफ द बोथ द ओपनर्स आर डाउन, नाउ इन दैट पर्टिकुलर केस इफ द अदर पीपल माइट हैव थॉट कि भाई 338 इज द टारगेट, वी शुड स्टार्ट हिटिंग ऑन ईच एंड एवरी बॉल so that the pressure should not be mount. But in that particular thing, first you are going to cost with the wicket also. So in that sense, what you have to do, first you have to break down this complex thing. Ki bhai dekho, if the target is 338, let's divide it into the blocks of 50, 50, 50, 50, 50, and then last 38 runs. So you will try to reach to certain targets ki we can go by doing the run ball wala thing to some extent, and then we will accelerate our pace so that pressure should also not mount, but we should also not cost wicket. On the contrary, today's match. So both are the contradiction that you will be able to see. So first you will do the decomposition. That means you will try to simplify the problem. You will try to identify कि बहुत छोटे छोटे parts में कैसे divide किया जा सकता है. Then you will identify the pattern. For example, I have achieved this 50 run with this strategy. This is working for me. Let's continue this for 2 or 3 more iteration. So you identify a pattern. If I talk about in the computational methodology or maybe the school related thing, let's say you are confident maybe in Hindi or maybe English or maybe Sanskrit, right? But you are not comfortable, let's say, with biology. So in that particular case, with those subjects with which you are comfortable, you can go further in the complex learning. But with those things where the concepts are not clear, there will be the feedback provided, and then there will be incorporation of the comparatively easier teaching pedagogy. So pattern recognition will be there. Then there will be identification of the prioritized things or the important thing in the form of the abstraction. So there will be identification ki sabse important kya hai inme se. So you will identify that, and based upon that, the algorithms is being going to created, and that will provide a opportunity in order to do well in that particular thing. So it will incorporate these key techniques. Next, apart from that, the foundational skills. So it will help in building the critical thinking. So see, if from very childhood, if you are going to expose to the artificial intelligence, computational thinking, you will be going to build up the critical thinking, then the logical reasoning, ethical awareness, right? So you will not see that as the shortcut tool. You will try to identify the psychology behind the same, because at that point of time, you will be having a lot of time available. So you will be going in depth and assessing the all these aspects including critical thinking, logical reasoning and the ethical awareness. What are the ethical constants associated with that? Understand and question the technology, developing the meta skill, not only for the study or the educational purposes, but how it can transform the society. Lastly is the future readiness. See, believe it or not, the future is lying obviously in the artificial intelligence. It is going to be a disruptor, but it will be a double-edged sword. It is obviously going to lay off many people. It is going to create the disruption in the society, but at the same time, it is also going to generate the employment. So that's why to make the youth or the demographic dividend relevant with the technology, there is a need to create the generation which is skilled and adaptable to the rapidly changing job-related market and scenario. That's why it is important at the very early stage also. Now, obviously, this is a new thing. That's why similar PYQ can't be there. But yes, the concept of artificial intelligence, how does the AI help in clinical diagnosis? So with respect to education, it can be asked, right? Do you perceive any threat of privacy? Okay. So like this, the question may be there. The last article in the detailed discussion is regarding the mega cities which are subsiding, right? So the 5 Indian mega cities face the land subsidence threat due to the excessive groundwater extraction. Now, from the perspective of UPSC, again, GS paper 1, where the geography and urbanization is part. GS paper 3, environment, economy, disaster management, science and technology. And GS paper 2, governance, because urban governance is also part of this, right? And the policy dimension. So what is this particular report suggesting? So there is a data that has been collected, and that data after analysis, it has been identified that from 2015 to 2023, there has been a substantial subsidence that has been observed in certain mega cities. From prominently 5 mega cities it is talking about. It is including Delhi, where the instance is very much critical, right? Then there is Mumbai, Kolkata, Bengaluru and the Chennai. What is this particular land subsidence? So just assume an example that this is a land surface. Let's assume this is the land surface. Now earth crust is basically like कि भाई यहाँ पर ये top layer है, then there is another layer, then there is another layer, then there is another layer. Like this you will reach to the core, right? So this is the structure. Now होता क्या है कि suppose करो if there is certain aquifer is the rocks between which the water is flowing. Now just assume a scenario. You have extracted the entire water out of this particular aquifer. Now what will be there? There is empty space. The chances are very high that the overland will subside under this, and this block will be filled, and basically the upper layer will be subsiding beneath. And that's what is the major issue. Now assume a scenario. Let's say this is a building. Now the aquifer just below this particular building gets completely emptied if there is any aquifer, and then that creates the space. The chances are high that this particular place might subside. Obviously, this is not a sudden phenomena in general, but it can also be there, right? And that will create a lot of disastrous situation. So that's what is being talked about as a part of this particular report. So the report says that it is impacting nearly 80 million people, with Delhi highest sinking rate of 51 mm annually. That means 51 millimeter it is subsiding. The land is subsiding in Delhi, majority of the regions mein. Now, it is also causing a wider pattern. For example, let's say this is a land. Now, suppose करो, ऐसा तो नहीं है कि everywhere it is the similar kind of aquifer. And sometime if let's say this is a plate, you might have seen seesaw, right? So suppose करो यहाँ पर aquifer था and that is emptied. Now here it was a complete single rock, right? So अगर यहाँ subside होता है, so this rock will like कि here it will uplift, here it will subside. So certain area might uplift also, and that is being observed. That localized uplift is also being observed. Like for example, near Delhi, it is in Dwarka, where the comparatively localized uplift that is also being observed. Now here it is being talked about that what is land subsidence. So it is the gradual or the sudden sinking of the earth surface because of the compression or the weakening of soil. Now why it will be there? For example, let's say previously there used to be soil जो कि prevent किया था land को going below this. But what now had happened because of, let's say, aquifer, or maybe because of any other activity, if that particular soil gets removed, so if that particular soil is removed or soil gets weakened. So pehle it was compact, now it got weakened, it converted into granules, and then it got subsided, and then overland is also going to get subsided. Or there is some kind of compression because of the extreme pressure. If there is compression and if those particular granules are not able to withstand that particular pressure, then also it can get subsided, right? So because of these things, there will be gradual or the sudden sinking of the earth's surface that may be observed. Now, if that is sudden, that is going to cause the disaster, because suppose if there is sudden geographical change, obviously that will going to cause even the tremors also, maybe the minor earthquake like situation. What are the primary causative factor? First is the groundwater pumping. So what you are doing right now is you are extracting a lot of groundwater. When we are extracting a lot of groundwater, we are basically emptying that particular aquifer. Ab chances are high ki usme from any other sources a lot of water might not be coming. But rather than recharge, we are extracting, discharging a lot, and that is causing the vacuum-like situation, and that is causing the subsidence. Next is large-scale mining. For doing the mining, you are doing sometimes blast also. That might create certain tremor, and if there is already a weak layer below this, that might cause the impact like subsidence. Further, urbanization. Jitna urbanization hoga, the resource extraction will be increased, whether it is mining, whether it is fresh water, and for that, obviously, you are going to extract, let's say in the borewell. बोरवेल में आप क्या करते हो? You are trying to find out the nearest aquifer and you are extracting water from that. You are emptying the water. You, as in obviously each and every one of us, right? So that's there. Also natural shift sometime because of the soil loosening, because of certain other activities that might be there. So these are certain primary causative factor. Now, which are the more prone region regarding this? So the Assam and Sikkim, jahan par there is more like, let's say, the hydrocarbon extraction. So hydrocarbon extraction mein you are going beneath the earth's surface, you are trying to extract. Sometimes you are using the blast, sometimes you are using drilling, and in that particular cases mein chances are high that you will damage the aquifer, and that may also get punctured, right? Also Himalayan towns like Joshimath. 2 years back, you have seen the disaster in Joshimath where the entire village got subsided because of this only, right? So Joshimath, Mussoorie, because of the unregulated development. And whenever there is a disaster that is getting caused in the regions of Himalaya, specifically this becomes the one of the major reasons behind the same. Now, what is the impact of the land subsidence? Obviously, when it is a disaster, obviously the impact is not going to get good for the people and also for the entire ecosystem also. So it impacts the infrastructure. When in city, there is the infrastructure that is developed, and if the region is subsiding, obviously it might damage the infrastructure. More than 2,000 buildings in Delhi are at impact of this kind of subsidence, right? Next is impact on the coastal region. Now assume a scenario. This is a sea surface level. This is a sea level. Now this used to be the land surface level previously. Now because of the subsidence, it is going down. Till the point of time when it come at this level of the sea, tab tak theek hai. But when it go down here, now the sea water will be rushing into this. So there will be salt water intrusion in the soil, and this is going to impact the productivity of the soil also. It will impact the soil quality also. Next is disasters. When the land is getting subsided, the buildings can crack, collapse, the roads can buckle, right? Apart from that, drainage networks can misalign. होता है ना. सपोज करो इफ प्रीवियसली लाइक दिस रिवर इज फ्लोइंग, ठीक है, और रिवर का ये फ्लो था. नाउ दिस इज बिकॉज ऑफ ऑब्वियसली देयर इज अ डिप्रेशन इन दिस रीजन, दैट्स व्हाई रिवर इज फ्लोइंग लाइक दिस. नाउ सपोज करो द लैंड नियर बाय दिस गेट सबसाइडेड. नाउ रिवर का कोर्स चेंज होके लाइक दिस रिवर कैन फ्लो. सो दिस कैन डिसरप्ट द नेचुरल फ्लो ऑफ वाटर ड्रेनेज नेटवर्क. इवन द रिवर दैट कैन misalign. Long-term ecological risk. So alter the river flow, affect the aquatic terrestrial habitat. So here we have talked about, let's say, drainage network. Previously ऐसा drainage network था. Now because of the subsidence and all, this might disalign. Along with that, river flow can also get impacted because of this, and this is causing the major disaster, which is not like a single disaster, it is a combination of the multiple disaster. And if this meets with, let's say, any other issues, for example, let's say earthquake, and that is going to create a large amount of disaster. So what is the way to prevent this particular type of land subsidence? Obviously, if it is happening because of the natural factors, obviously you can't prevent that much, but you can do something in order to prevent the negative consequences. For example, first thing is innovative solution like the artificial recharge of the depleted aquifers. So right now there are technologies available that through the satellites you can do the monitoring of that particular region through, let's say, synthetic aperture radar or different type of frequency bands, and you can identify the aquifers, the level of aquifers and all. So if there are depleted aquifer, at least you can try and recharge those so that the vacuum or the emptiness should not be created there, and that can prevent the sudden collapse. Also, the deep soil mixing, right? So at least certain space is filled with certain other material. Apart from that, advanced monitoring technology, so that at least if you are identifying that there is major disaster that is going to be there, you can do the preventive measure, you can shift the population, you can empty that particular infrastructure. So there are, for example, PSI and SAR, which is the synthetic aperture radar, means monitoring of that particular places. For example, for the city with the stable structure, for the agricultural vegetable area, and SAR for the mountainous terrain. So these are different synthetic aperture radar in order to identify the aquifer level and also trying to give a solution regarding that. So this is regarding the subsidence of the land that is being observed, right? So with this, we have completed the important news articles which were in detail. Next is regarding the personality in news, which is Pasumpan Muthuramalinga Tewar, right? So 1908 to 1963 was the time period when he lived, right? So from now, Indian Vice President has paid homage to the Pasumpan Muthuramalinga Tewar on his birth anniversary. That's why obviously when you might not have heard a lot of multiple times through the books and other resources the name of the personality, and if government is celebrating any specific anniversary of those particular people who have contributed significantly as far as the freedom struggle is concerned, so in that cases you can expect the question from the side of UPSC. So let's discuss certain brief things regarding him. So he was born in the village Pasumpan, from which he got the name also, the Pasumpan Muthuramalinga Tewar, right? So this particular village was in the Ramanathpuram, which is in Tamil Nadu. So the community he belonged to, Kondai and Kontai Marava community of Mukkulatur, right? So this is the community he belonged to. So he was an aide of Subhash Chandra Bose. Subhash Chandra Bose was his political friend, right? He also joined the national movement, even helped the Congress in order to expand the influence of the Congress in the specifically the rural Tamil region. So interior region of the Tamil Nadu, he helped Congress in order to expand its influence. So there were movement like, for example, temple entry movement, which was there in 1920s, like specifically 1925. He also supported this movement specifically in Tamil Nadu, repeal of the Criminal Tribes Act in order to give the equal status to the tribal people, right? He also got the title, for example, uncrowned monarch, Netaji of South, right? So Southern King also, there were multiple titles that were provided to him because of his contribution with respect to the freedom struggle. Even post-independence, he was the member of Legislative Assembly and the member of Parliament. So the contribution that he had provided was immense, and that's why we should be also aware about those personalities who had contributed significantly. The government is celebrating their anniversaries, but we might not have heard a lot about those people. So have a brief idea about these personalities from the examination perspective and even from the perspective of the people of India and the citizen of India. Right. Now, having discussed about him, now let's take certain other quick updates regarding important articles. First is regarding the Chief Justice of India. So, under the power of Article 124 of the Indian Constitution, the President appoints the Chief Justice of India, right? So, the Justice Suryakant as the 53rd Chief Justice of India, replacing Justice CJI B.R. Gavai, right? So, the process includes that the Union Minister of Law and Justice seeks the advice or the recommendation from the outgoing CJI, means CJI B.R. Gavai gives the recommendation to appoint someone as the Chief Justice of India. Now, that is the recommendation. So, conventionally, kya hota hai? Recommendation is given for the senior most judges, but sometime it had also happened that there was precedence provided to certain other judges than the senior most judges. So, it had happened 3 times in the Indian history, right? So, the Union Minister of Law and Justice, once the recommendation is received, puts up the recommendation to PM, and then PM discuss with the same with the president and advises the president, and then president appoints that particular person as the Chief Justice of India. So this is the process of appointing the Chief Justice of India. Next is regarding the Chabahar port. So India has got the 6 months extension from the US sanctions, like waiver it has got for the Chabahar port related operations in Iran. So this is the Chabahar port, this is the location of Chabahar port. Now this is India, right? So from India, in order to counter the Gwadar port of Pakistan, which is being developed by China, this Chabahar was the ultimate strategy in order to counter or provide a shadow to this particular port. Now this is also facilitating its access to Afghanistan, because through Iran, Zaranj-Dilaram highway se it is connected to the prominent cities of Afghanistan, and from here it can supply a lot of things which were being hindered by the direct geographical connectivity which is prevented by the illegally occupied Kashmir region by the Pakistan, right? So in that case, the Sistan Baluchistan province on the Makran coast of southeastern part of Iran. So this is the location. So southeastern part of Iran, Makran coast par hai, right? And it is situated in the Gulf of Oman, broadly the part of the Arabian Sea. And here you can see this particular region, this is the Strait of Hormuz. So when Iran and Israel ka war chal raha tha, in that particular place pe, this region was in the news again and again, because Iran was threatening that we will close the Strait of Hormuz. Here it is the Persian Gulf, which is very rich as far as the oil and natural gas is concerned, right? So it is only deep sea port in Iran which is having direct ocean access. You can see it is having direct the ocean access. Then two terminals are there, Shahid Beheshti and the Shahid Kalantri. These are two terminals that is being operated. It is also the part of the proposed international north-south transportation corridor. So this is regarding the Chabahar port. So whenever these ports and all are there in news, just have a brief idea about their locations and certain other geographical aspects. Next is regarding the secondary sanction. So there are threats that are being assumed regarding the USA ka secondary sanction that might impact the refiners that are refining the Russian oil in India. So that's how the secondary sanctions are being imposed. So there are two types of sanctions that we are going to talk about. First is the primary sanctions. Like for example, if me and you at certain war, let's say the US and Iran are fighting. If US want to punish Iran, US puts sanctions on Iran, directly on Iran because of the Iran's issues, and that's what is the primary sanctions in the maybe in the form of, let's say, the export control, in the form of embargo, or in the form of, let's say, trade control they are doing. So the international trade restrictions will be imposed. And the secondary sanction is that whoever is trading with Iran, unpe, matlab third countries which are not directly in the spectrum but doing the trade with the other countries where you are imposing sanctions. So in these cases, like for example, if India is doing trade with Iran, India is doing trade with Russia, and on Russia, if it is primary sanction, it will be secondary sanctions on India. So like this, these are the sanctions. So it serves as the force multiplier for the primary sanctions. मतलब primary sanctions को और aggravate करने के लिए this strategy is being utilized. Next is the Model Youth Gram Sabha. So Ministry of Panchayati Raj in collaboration with Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Tribal Affairs have launched the Model Youth Gram Sabha. What this name suggests, this is the Youth Gram Sabha. That means providing the idea to youth regarding the importance of Gram Sabha, so that we can get the leaders from those people who are like right now at the younger age, and they can contribute a lot later on in the society by doing the active participation in Gram Sabha and the other deliberative bodies, and also inculcating the tomorrow's leader, right? So it is an initiative to strengthen the Jan Bhagidari and promote the participatory local governance by engaging the student in the simulated Gram Sabha session. That means there will be, जैसे होता है ना youth parliament, like this youth Gram Sabha, in order to make people aware regarding the importance of Gram Sabha. It is aligned with the national educational policy implemented across the Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya JNV and the Eklavya Model Residential School. So it is aligning with that particular policy. Now what are these? Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas were established in 1986 in order to see, Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya were targeting the rural areas. So rural areas mein, despite the socio-economic background, you will provide the opportunity to those students who are deserving. Based upon the examination, if you are able to clear, there will be scholarship and there will be residential schooling provided in the rural areas. Next is the Eklavya Model Residential School. So as the name suggests, it is for the tribal region, jahan par population 50% se zyada hai, scheduled tribe ka, and roughly 20,000 ke around tribals are available minimum. Those regions में there will be Eklavya Model Residential Schools for the quality education for the scheduled tribe students, right? So this is the EMRS. Next is regarding Digibandar, right? So Digibandar comes from Bandargah, right? So Digibandar launched at the Maritime Week 2025 as the national digital framework for the Indian ports. So Indian ports को automate, artificial intelligence enabled, efficient and turnaround time को decrease करने के लिए this particular policy is being taken place. So making port data driven, you should be having an idea regarding all the statistics of the port, AI enabled, interconnected to enhance the efficiency, safety and the transparency at the ports, right? What is the focus? Predictive logistics, that means you should be having an idea that this much is the load of this port, so what will be the logistic requirement? Then the digital twin. So if anything is going on at the ground, you should be having the simulation available so as to create the scenarios and test that. Next is the automating the port operation. Many such things which can be automated, which are the repetitive tasks that can be made as the automated in order to reduce the time taken and increase the efficiency. So this is regarding the digital Bandar. Next is consumer price index. So basically, who is releasing this consumer price index? MOSPI, which is the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. So right now there is a revamping that is being taken place. So base revision exercise chal rahi hai regarding the consumer price index. So this is the measure of inflation at the consumer's end, that what kind of prices that consumer has to pay for certain goods. So it is calculated based upon the baskets of good that is available. Okay. So it is part of the, as a part of CPI, the housing constitutes a major component. So what is the component of housing? 21.67, but in the urban areas, because in rural areas, we are not calculating housing. So there can be question in prelims that CPI is calculated this much percentage in rural and this much percentage in urban areas. So rural में नहीं calculate होता है. Urban areas में it is 21.67. If average देखें तो it is 10.07%. Currently, housing index not compiled for the rural sector. What is the weightage of other sectors? For example, food and beverage, 45%, miscellaneous involving education, health, personal care, 28%, fuel and light, 6.4%, clothing, 6.53%, pan, tobacco and intoxicants, 2.38%. So this is the weightage. In that particular basket, what is the weightage of different category of products? So this is regarding the consumer price index. There is another thing which is the wholesale price index, WPI. We have already discussed regarding this. There is producers price index, PPI also, not specifically being calculated in India for this purposes, but for academic purposes only. Next is Kunming Biodiversity Fund. So this particular fund was created in order to go for funding or giving the loans to the countries in order to implement the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. So this was being agreed upon by the countries in order to halt the reduction of the biodiversity and replenishing the biodiversity. Losses को reduce करना and replenish करना biodiversity को. So this is a non-binding framework adopted at the COP15 of the UNCBD, which held in Montreal, Canada in 2022. So when it was created in 2022. There are 4 goals for 2050 and 23 targets. So basically, in crux, it is to halt the loss of biodiversity and reverse the trend by 2050. So this particular fund was established under the leadership of China's Ministry of Environment, then the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, with the Secretariat of CBD Convention of Biological Diversity and UNDP, United Nations Development Program. Context क्या था? Recently 7 countries secured funding from the Kunming Biodiversity Fund, KBF, right? Next is regarding the ecological drought. So the IIT Kharagpur study highlights that the ecologically fragile forest of the Western Ghats, Himalaya, Northeast, along with the cropland in the central India are increasingly facing ecological drought. So when we talk about the ecological drought, that means the vegetations are facing the severe conditions where the moisture content is getting reduced, even their growth is getting compromised, right? So it is the prolonged moisture deficit disrupting the ecosystem structure, biodiversity and the carbon balance. Now suppose if there is no proper moisture available, obviously how you are going to ensure the photosynthesis, and then there will be harsh condition that will be developed. Even that will lead to the more amount of the forest fires driven by the natural phenomena such as lack of rainfall, warming of the temperature, even warming of the ocean, right? So like this is causing the ecological droughts. So it is reducing plant growth, local species will extinct because they are reliant on moisture. If there is no moisture or lack of moisture, it is going to impact this. What are the other type of drought? meteorological drought, this is based upon the rainfall content. So meteorological is based upon the rainfall, kitna rainfall ho raha hai. Agricultural drought, it is basically based upon ki what is the impact on the agricultural crop yield and all, right? So that is agricultural drought. Hydrological, that is depending upon the sources of water, for example the over the land sources and the underground sources of water, that particular sources are getting depleted, that is the hydrological drought. And the socio-economic, when that is impacting, lack of water or the availability of water is impacting the people in general, that is the socio-economic. So drought should not be think from the perspective of just the lack of rainfall. There are many other type of the droughts that are there. You will read this in the static also. Okay. So with this, we have completed the current affairs discussion for 31st of October. I hope whatever we have discussed is clear to you. Certain articles were discussed in more detail in order to give you more clarity about those things where the probability is very, very high to be asked in the examination. Okay? So there must be certain question on your screen. Try to attempt and also try to visit this particular portal, Digital Current Affairs portal, in order to get more benefits regarding current affairs. Also, I have recommended you one video regarding the rare earth element. Do watch this in order to get clear idea about the rare earth elements and the policy of China and the monopoly of China. So thank you everyone. We'll meet again. Have a great day.